saying it too fast, you know. Do you think we can monitor our speed? And everybody's looking around, trying to figure out why we ain't slowing down. Do you think we can monitor?
Our interest is in young people, in just making sure when decisions are being made at the White House, when decisions are being made on Capitol Hill, that our perspective is included. So if people are thinking about, you know, the under 26. I have a ton of friends who before '09, they graduate from college, it was a recession, no insurance, no anything. So it was like, you know, they just prayed they didn't get sick. But with provisions like this and with young people advocating for these type of laws, like, we're just helpful in that way. But we don't have any direct connection politically.
Do you think we can monitor our speed? But I can't keep on ignoring your timing. You're never in sync with my heartbeat, no. If you think you can keep
run
up
the HYPE
with
program.
me.
Now, HYPE is an acronym. It stands for Healthy You, Positive Energy. And what we do, we partner with community organizations. We're in over 80 schools throughout the city of Philadelphia. And most importantly, we work with our youth to teach them to become healthy leaders, to be able to go back to their communities and go back to their schools and to effectuate healthy change.
Trip with eyes, we levitate to Parisian and Egyptian skies and sit back as I do it when your lips and eyes.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Well, I'd like to welcome all of you to Community College of Philadelphia. I don't know how much you know about Community College of Philadelphia, but we are the only public institution of higher education in the city of Philadelphia. We have about 37,000 students who pass through our doors every year, and more than 600,000 students have come through Community College of Philadelphia since we opened in 1965. So I'd like to welcome all of you here. You're all very special guests to Community College of Philadelphia, but I'd also like to mention some other special guests that will be here later on in the day. One is Dominique Sharpton, Board President of Education for a Better America, Marcus Bright, Executive Director of Education for a Better America, and Paula Peebles, President of the National Action Network Philadelphia chapter. I'd also like to mention our keynote speakers today, the Reverend Al Sharpton, Founder and President of the National Action Network, and Dr. William Haidt, Superintendent of the Philadelphia School District. You will hear from them later on. We're also honored to have with us later today Mayor Michael A. Nutter, who's going to speak this afternoon during the luncheon, and also Congressman Shaka Fattah. So it's critical for us to support students in our schools. And I'm so glad that there are some parents, some adults here today, in addition to students, to talk about support and to think about supporting them. At CCP, fostering student success is our main goal, and it's our main mission. And we do a lot of different things to make sure that that happens. For example, we have learning labs for our students so that students can take advantage of free tutoring. We have many student access centers that are full of technology, so students that don't have access to the latest technology at home can access technology here at the college. We have a Center for Male Engagement that focuses particularly on African American males and how do we help African American males to be more successful in schools. And we have financial literacy sessions that help students to think about how to manage their expenses and to manage debt. So there are a lot of support services available for students. Our students go either directly out of CCP into jobs, nurses, dental assistants, police officers, or they transfer to some of the best four-year institutions in the city of Philadelphia, University of Pennsylvania, Temple, Drexel, LaSalle, you name it, and our students transfer there. And when our students transfer to the four-year institutions, they usually do better than students who originate at that institution. So our students who start here, get their degree, that's critical, and then transfer to Temple, over 80% of them graduate from Temple, as opposed to if they started at Temple. So we believe we do a great job of preparing students for success either immediately after graduating from CCP or success when they transfer to a four-year institution. So I hope this won't be your last visit here today to Community College of Philadelphia, and I hope you will take advantage of the literature and information that's available to you. We have brochures outside. If not, At some future date, you may want to visit our website, www.ccp.edu. So I hope it's not the last time that we will hear from you or see you. Welcome all of you to Community College of Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And I was here earlier, and I walked in, and I saw the young people wobbling up here, Mayor. They were doing the wobble and doing it really well. As a matter of fact, I started to jump in, but you guys were so into it, and it was not that much space, so I appreciate seeing you. I actually want to acknowledge the Community College of Philadelphia for providing the space and the ability to do this. Education for a Better America, thank you as well. Oh, absolutely. The National Action Network and NAN President Al Sharpton. Mayor Nutter, thank you for being here. And I know that, I don't believe he's here yet, but I understand that Congressman Shaka Fatah will be here as well. So I want to acknowledge all of those individuals. And I want to acknowledge all of the students, but most importantly, all of the parents who are here today. And one of the things that we know in education is that the means to opportunity is through one pathway, and that pathway is education. And the education provides us with the knowledge and the information to make decisions. And I want to use a couple of examples because this is really important here in the School District of Philadelphia. We always talk about our work to prepare students for life after high school. And 2 years ago, if you asked all of our seniors at the beginning of the school year or at the end of their 11th grade year, how many of them wanted to, or what did they want to do after high school? 83% of them indicated that they wanted to go off to college at the conclusion of high school. Then at the end of that year, there was a difference, almost a 40% difference in those students who had a desire to go off to high school and those who actually did go off to college. Not a desire to go off to high school, a desire to go to college, and those who actually did. Of that 83%, the number who enrolled was about 50%. Of the 50%, the numbers who actually showed up dropped to about 30%. Of the 30% who enroll, the numbers who actually return for the second year of college dropped to 16%. So our work is extremely important, not just around what we do to prepare students for access into college, but what we do to prepare students for success in college. It's extremely important. And parents, it's extremely important for you to know information about your child's school, what we're doing on behalf of your child to get them ready, and we want to hear from you on whether or not our students are actually ready. Because one thing that we know is that there's a whole lot of, there are a lot of financial institutions who are quick to loan students money. It's called student loans. Had a couple of them myself. I think I just paid them off, actually. Quick to loan students loans, quick to give students money for college. But here's one thing that's really important. For a student who is in college for year one and required to take remedial courses in reading, writing, mathematics, guess what? The money that you borrowed is paying for a course that doesn't even count. So part of this work is important, not just to get to graduation, but to have the skills to either enter into the work world or to get into the college of your choosing. And this has to be the choice of our children, not the choice of adults who have refused to provide them with the adequate resources that they need or the adequate instruction, or expose them to the adequate expectations. So what we want to talk about, or I want to talk about before I introduce a real lunchtime speaker, Mayor Nutter, is what students need in order to be successful. And here in the district, the school district of Philadelphia, this is not about, and we've had our own challenges. And I know many of you, if you live in the city or anywhere else for that matter, understand the challenges that we have had to face. But at the end of the day, on Monday, we had 135,000 students show up to our district schools. It is incumbent for us to provide them with the ability to be successful. And when we begin to think about college, this is not just a thought for students who are in high schools. Parents, this begins when students enter school. And we have to ask questions like, are they reading on grade level? Are they doing math? Do they have access to high-quality classrooms? Do they have access to great teachers, great principals, great technology? All of those things become extremely important. So here's what, in my view, students need in order for success. Effective educators, educators who are not just very good with content knowledge, but who love and want to be around students. Because you see, we have some people who are great mathematicians. The only problem is they don't like children. That becomes a problem when you get into classrooms and into schools. We want our students to have access to the best programs. We want safe and supportive learning environments that take into account the social and emotional needs of children. We need highly trained administrators, rigorous curriculum, clean and well-maintained facilities. These are the things that are under our collective control. I would argue that these are not just natural rights for students, but they are fundamental rights in public education. We must accept that there are real consequences to decisions we all make and the priorities we set. We can no longer blame anyone else, society for that matter, or anyone else for a student's inability to read on grade level if we do not take every action in the classroom and outside of the classroom, in our school buildings, in our district, in our city, in our state, in our country. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here today. Thank you for exposing yourselves, your families, and most importantly, your children to critical information about education and a lot of other matters that impact our community. With that, I want to introduce an individual who really needs no introduction. As in my introduction last year, on July 1, I was named Superintendent of School District of Philadelphia. I began that work October 1, so I haven't had my 1-year anniversary yet, although it feels like a lot more than 11 months. But during that whole entire time, there's been an individual who has been relentless in his support, both in his actions and in where he is sending all of the resources of the city, and he's done everything within his authority to ensure that our students are safe, they have access to high-quality teachers and high-quality programs. And over the past several years, he has been a tremendous financial supporter to the School District of Philadelphia, to the children of this city, and to the citizens. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you our mayor, Mayor Michael Nutter.
Good afternoon, everyone, and Dr. Haidt, thank you very, very much for your work, first and foremost, and certainly for very kind comments. What I'd like to try to do, and I really appreciate everyone being here today. So I have some remarks that were put together for me. More than likely, I will not use many of them. Which will make a lot of folks at my office very nervous. I'll stay close, but the Philadelphians here, you know, from time to time, I just kind of go off on some things, and that might actually happen today, so you might want to get your recorders ready. Let me thank you all for, seriously, Education for a Better America, and of course, National Action Network. Marcus, thank you for your work and your leadership, and of course, my friend, he's a true friend, Reverend Al Sharpton. Can we please recognize Reverend Al for his dedication and commitment? And of course, Reverend Al was smart enough to make sure that the board president for Education for a Better America, of course, is Dominique Sharpton. Let's, in her own right, give Dominique a big, big round of applause as well. Dr. Haidt mentioned Dr. Judith Gay, who is the president of Community College of Philadelphia, and we appreciate her great work. The only thing I'm going to say about Dr. Gay is that this will be bad English, but I won't use bad English. You're the president. We need to have you a little more comfortable with sitting up front. You've been in the back, in the background, and making stuff happen for too long. So I want you, what is this, your second week? Conclusion of, weren't we together last Saturday? So Dr. Gay just started as, I know this because we've been together for 3 events in the last 8 days. Her first day was last Friday. As president, we were together in my office on Thursday, and then we were together here at Community College on Saturday for graduation for 23 businesses that are participating in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Business Initiative, and we're here again today. So we're going to be spending a lot of time together, Doc, so you need to get used to being up front. Please. Paula Peoples is president of the National Action Network in Philadelphia, and we appreciate her, and Janae Ingram is the executive director of the National Action Network as well. We've got, I always do this, hopefully I think they're used to it. We have City Year in the house, and so I want to recognize City Year and these young people who are giving their time. Now, I know you had presentations and participation with Get Healthy Philly and the Young Invincibles and the Health and Wellness Workshop. You've had information provided on the Affordable Care Act. Registration starts on October 1st for that. We owe a great debt of gratitude to our president, President Barack Obama, who devoted so much time and effort, spent a ton of political capital when no one else, I think folks have said about 7 presidents have been trying to provide affordable health care in the United States of America, but President Barack Obama actually brought it home and made it happen. So we should give it up for the president, the work that he's doing. And you all are working, of course, with a variety of city officials and community leaders and parents and teachers and students across the city to improve health and education outcomes in our city. The last thing I'm going to give from my remarks, I'm supposed to tell you that, and you already know this, but living a healthy lifestyle. I don't really give healthy food advice and all that. Eat whatever you want. Just try to go to the gym and take care of yourself. I was there this morning. I don't get there as much as I should, but I'm trying. I'm still working on it. But I know you're getting a good lunch over there. I saw that. And but eating right and seriously getting regular exercise and utilizing preventive care measures for all of us, but a special mention to the guys, because we're young, we're tough, we're invincible, and quite honestly, we got more stuff going on than we ever actually want to admit. So actually, go to the doctor from time to time. Just because you ignore it doesn't mean it's going to go away. That pain, that little bit of pain you have today, could be something much bigger 6 months from now, a year from now. So just go on to the doctor and do what you need to do. Get some sleep, especially to our young people here. I know that you all think that you're somehow going to miss something if you don't stay up until 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I don't know what y'all think you're going to miss. Whatever it is, it will be there tomorrow. Your butts need to go to sleep at night and to be ready for that next day, to get up and be ready to go. And let me just say one last thing. Notwithstanding whatever the snack is for the day, I can tell you that a bag of chips and a grape soda is not the breakfast of champions. and I know it's a standard part of the diet here in Philadelphia, but you got to do a little more than that to be ready to focus and do your work and get some stuff done. I've been in elective office now for 20 years. 14 and a half as a member of City Council. I've represented the 4th District out in West and Northwest Philadelphia, a little over 5 and a half as mayor. I've been involved in politics for 30 plus years. I'm born, raised, and educated in the city of Philadelphia. This is my town. I've never lived anywhere else, and I'm not going to. I visit a lot of places. This is my home. This is where I'm going to be. And whatever work I've done, I'm going to be here to see it through, and then I'll be here to help others or someone else. That's my passion. On my first day in office, some of you may recall at the Academy of Music on January 7, 2008, my first day as mayor, I set out 3 major goals for the city, things that I thought were critical for the city of Philadelphia to be able to move forward. The one was, and some of you will recall, up from 2000 and 2002 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, the homicide rate in Philadelphia was going up, while in most other major cities across America it was going down. And when I ran as a candidate in 06 and 07, I said that we can actually do something about this. We need to focus on it. We need to cut down on the amount of shootings and killings here in this city. And they particularly affect young black males, such that the #1 cause of death for black men between the ages of 16 and 34 in the city of Philadelphia is homicide. I can report to you today that on that day I said that we could reduce homicide by 30 to 50% in 3 to 5 years. As I mentioned, I'm 5.5 years into office, and if you compare year-to-date today to the year before I came into office, I can stand here and tell you that we have had a 40% reduction in homicides since 2007 in the city of Philadelphia. And this year, year-to-date, we're at about a 32% reduction as compared to the same time period last year. We can actually do something about violence when we focus our attention on it. So that was one of the 2 things that I said at the inauguration. The other 2 were that we needed to cut in half the high school dropout rate. The time I came into office, we were graduating about 54% of our young people out of high school. And I said that we must double our college degree attainment rate in a 5 to 7 year time frame. Since then, rather than talking about the dropout rate, I flipped that around, because the other side of the dropout rate, of course, is the graduation rate. That's a much more positive thing to talk about. And so I said we needed to get our high school graduation rate up to about 80% by 2015. Today, the high school graduation rate in Philadelphia is 64%, up from 54%. And the college degree attainment rate is up from 18% at that time to now 24%. Progress, but not enough. Progress, but not enough. Now, here's the unusual thing about what I said that day. I do absolutely believe, as mayor, that I can directly do something positive about crime reduction in the city. The police force is within the city administration. I work with the district attorney. We work with the courts directly. I fund all of those entities. I have some ability to influence how many police officers we hire, where they work, what kind of work they do, and how we engage with the community. I have virtually no direct oversight or involvement or jurisdiction as it relates to K-12 and certainly not college at all. But if we're going to have a great city, if we're going to be a city of hope and opportunity and a future for young people, then regardless of jurisdiction, regardless of technical authority, I felt as mayor that I had to invest my time and attention and focus in education, even if it's a system taken over by the state in 2001, and the mayor in the Home Rule Charter has virtually no direct connection or involvement in education. But they're my children, it's our city, and we had to do something about it. And colleges and universities are all independent entities. And so you can't have a great city if you don't invest in young people and utilize every possible resource that you have to make a difference in their lives. Now, the one thing that folks didn't mention to me as I was going on to the inauguration in January of 2008, they didn't mention that we had actually slipped into a recession in December of 2007. No one told me that, because we actually didn't know, right? You'll recall in 2008, we had a great presidential election, and we're in the general election, and all of a sudden the bottom starts to fall out, and it was, what's today's date? On September 11th, 2008, that was a Thursday, I announced that the city of Philadelphia had at least a $450 million 5-year planned deficit and growing. That was on a Thursday, September 11th, 2008, 5 years ago. That weekend, so when we made that announcement, folks said, well, how could that be? And you just got in office, and you just passed a budget, and what are y'all doing down there, and et cetera, et cetera. Folks were shocked. Over that weekend, you may recall that Lehman Brothers completely collapsed and went out of business. The following week, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Washington Mutual, and a number of other entities, every day somebody fell. They were like dominoes going down. Then Senator Barack Obama and then Senator John McCain, basically announced that they were almost suspending the presidential election because they needed to rush back to Washington to pass a piece of legislation under then President George Bush. Everyone seems to forget this, that somehow the recession was caused by Barack Obama. He was a U.S. senator at the time. Just give me, I'm taking you somewhere and it'll make sense. This is not just a history lesson, but it's to get to where we are right now with Dr. Haidt and his team. They do what they do. They create TARP, the auto industry, too big to fail. We got to support them. Housing, too big to fail. We got to support them. Financial services, too big to fail. We have to support them. In the meantime, state and local governments shedding services, raising taxes, losing employees, cutbacks in funding, and over the course of the time of the recession, state and local governments lost 700,000 jobs. In the meantime, Senator Barack Obama becomes president, gets sworn in, and on January 20th, 2009, 700,000 people in America lost their jobs in the month of January 2009. It's before the ink was dry on the oath of office. He then pushed through the greatest economic recovery plan in the history of the United States of America. Helped this city, helped the school district, helped the state, and America started coming back. And in the meantime, millions of private sector jobs have been created. The stock market dropped to somewhere between 6,000 and 7,000 on the Dow. Today it's up in the 13,000, 14,000 neighborhood. A lot of things have come back. Funding for school districts from the Economic Recovery Plan expired. Costs for services went up. Funding from the state of Pennsylvania was cut. Funding by the city of Philadelphia was increased. Today, we are spending an additional $155 million a year more than we were 2 years ago. Don't let anyone tell you any different. If you own a house or a property or a building in the city of Philadelphia, you know that we raised your taxes twice and we raised the use and occupancy tax once, and your parking rates in Center City and University City to support this school district. There were other ideas and proposals put forward that did not make it through City Council. There are measures in Harrisburg right now that need to be voted on. This is a challenge and a problem that we can actually do something about. When Dr. Haidt talked about folks borrowing money to go to college and then taking remedial classes, they're taking remedial classes for things that they did not learn and should have learned and should have had the opportunity to learn when they were in public school, in high school. Because here is a fact. If you're not reading at grade level by 3rd or 4th grade, unfortunately, you will struggle through middle school. You might show up for 9th grade in high school. You will struggle through 10th grade, and you are most likely to drop out of high school because you weren't reading at grade level in 3rd grade. And it is not a myth, it is a fact that in private industry, especially in the prison industrial complex, they do, especially for boys, look at 3rd grade reading and math test scores to figure out how many more cells they need to build 10 years from now. That is a fact. That is true. So you're either going to the state pen or you're going to Penn State. You decide how you want your tax dollars to be spent. I had the occasion, I met some folks, I think that was Tuesday or Wednesday. Must have been Tuesday, because I was only here. I traveled on Wednesday, and I'll tell you about that in a second. I met a group of parents who are involved with Head Start. So we have all these Head Start centers all around the city of Philadelphia. 50 plus of them are run by the district and another 80 or so. We have 146. I forget the exact numbers. Could be 59 and 87, I think. And each one of them has a policy council. And then there's a citywide policy council. And I learned an amazing fact. So at a Head Start level, which 2/3 of our school children are eligible to participate in Head Start, guess how many actually do participate? 1/3. There's a whole other third of kids out there who are eligible for Head Start services, which are free, that they're not taking advantage of. But what I learned from these parents who are actively engaged and seriously focused is that Head Start policy councils interview every Head Start teacher to decide as a parent policy council whether that teacher can teach their children in Head Start. These are 3- and 4-year-olds. And then as their child progresses through public education, hopefully, they suddenly pretty much lose the authority to have any say in who teaches their child. And principals, many of which don't have a say in who teaches children either. Because the teachers come, and based on how long you've been around, you get assigned, or you can bump somebody else out of a spot. And so I don't understand why we would take that kind of engagement, that kind of authority, that kind of responsibility away from our parents who are paying for the system, who are looking out for their kids, and don't understand why I had all this responsibility and authority as a Head Start parent for my child when they were 3 or 4 years old, but I have nothing to say when they're in 3rd or 4th grade. That makes no sense. We need a new and real education funding formula across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is one of only 3 states in the United States of America that does not use a student-weighted funding formula, take into consideration special needs of children or special education, take into consideration some of the differences between urban schools and urban districts and rural and suburban. In only Pennsylvania, Delaware, and North Carolina don't use some version of a student-weighted funding formula for education. And so, unfortunately, it really is a fact that the quality of your education is a function of what zip code your parents decided to live in. While at the same time, in the state constitution, not in the home rule charter, in the state constitution, it says that the state shall provide a thorough and efficient form of education for all students in Pennsylvania, regardless if you live in Philadelphia, or Pittsburgh, or Erie, or Harrisburg, or a whole bunch of other places that you may or may not have ever heard of. We need to be focused. Down the street where I work, and up in Harrisburg. But I would also suggest all across the 67 counties of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the 500 school districts in this state. The funding of education and educational access is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. So I just returned yesterday afternoon from Birmingham. I was in Birmingham for 2 days. I'm a immediate past president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. The mayors, working with Mayor Bell, who's the mayor of Birmingham. Of course, the 50th anniversary commemoration of the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. It's on the 15th. And that was a part of the spark of what helped America to understand what civil rights, what human rights, what dignity and access is all about. It wasn't just about, could I get a burger at the Five and Dime? It wasn't just about, can I live over here, not over there? It wasn't just about, could I walk down the street with whomever I wanted to walk down the street with? It was about access and rights and dignity. And that's what education gives you. Education is the key to lifting people out of poverty. It's a crime reduction strategy. It's an empowerment strategy. It's an unemployment strategy. It is a quality of life strategy that when you are educated, when you have it, as my grandmother used to say, boy, get as much education as you can because no one can ever take that away from you. That's what this is about. It's not just about a lunch counter. It's about whether you can own the store. It's not about whether you can live where you want to live. It's about, can I own a company to build more houses in that neighborhood? This is about freedom. The March on Washington was the March on Washington for jobs and freedom. And if you're not educated, you're not free. And you can't get a job. 50 years later, we're still talking about the same issues. This is only a matter of political will. Only a matter of political will. And so the question becomes, what are we prepared to do to support our young people, to support our children, to make sure that their lives actually are better than anything that we've been able to do? I'm a pure beneficiary. I was 6 years old 50 years ago. I am a pure example of a beneficiary of everything that the civil rights movement was all about. I've pretty much always been able to go where I wanted to go, do what I wanted to do. We can't take these things for granted. Too many folks gave their time, their effort, their toil, and in many instances, their lives for us to be complacent. As I was coming in the room there, I got one of the programs. But the program was right next to a voter registration cards, the forms. That voter registration form is a passport to equality. No matter who you are, tall, short, rich, poor, whatever your station in life may be, everybody's still got one vote. Everybody's vote counts, and every vote should be counted. We went to the, and I'll close now. We went to the Birmingham Civil Rights Institute, which is across the street from the 16th Street Baptist Church. They said black folks would come to the polling place, and they would say, okay, have you paid all your taxes? Yes, I paid my taxes. Did you graduate from school? Yeah, I graduated from school. Okay. How many bubbles in a bar of soap? How many green jelly beans are in this jar of jelly beans? And if you couldn't answer those questions, you still could not vote. I thought we got past all that. Now we've got to talk about voter ID and all this other kind of stuff. Barriers, trying to stop people from exercising their franchise 50 years later. We have to pay attention to what's going on. There is not one reason in the world that the things that we've asked Harrisburg to do, pass a cigarette tax, pass this, pass that, all in an effort to take some responsibility down here on the ground in Philadelphia. If you're not going to send us additional funding, at least let us try to do something for ourselves. I can't do this by myself. I'm strong enough and secure enough within myself to acknowledge that. Any great effort needs a whole lot of folks. As great as Dr. King was, he wasn't marching down the street by himself. Had a whole lot of folks walking with him. And so whether it's a short walk down the street or a bus ride or a car ride or a train ride or whatever to Harrisburg, we need to let folks know that we're serious about funding education for our children, that we can actually do something about resources in the classroom, that teachers should be fully engaged and fully active and fully enthused and empowered about working with our children. And if that's not your thing anymore, then maybe you need to find something else to do. I go into the supermarket from time to time, put my stuff up on the counter, and you see somebody, everybody has a bad day, but, sometimes you see the same folks. They just got a really bad attitude. And a couple times, you know how you have the belt, you put your stuff up on the belt, and then there's the cash register and the whole thing. And a couple times I've, look over the thing. I said, is there a ball and chain around your ankle? You don't like people. You don't like service. Why are you doing this job? You need to find another gig. And so as Dr. Height says, some of the most brilliant people are teachers. Unfortunately, some just don't like kids. We need to find something else for you to do. I'm sure there's some research you can conduct or some other things. I'm not saying anybody should lose their gig, but you have to love these children. I go to a lot of schools. I can take about an hour, and then I'll go do something much easier, which is trying to run the city of Philadelphia. Can you imagine 30 little kids in a room with 30 little different things going on in their mind? You don't know who saw somebody killed last night, or sister got abused, or something else is going on, or parents are fighting or doing whatever they're doing, and then they come to school and they've got these challenges and issues, mental health services that are needed, funding support, education, recreation, nutrition. All of these things make for a great school. Art and music are important. They're as important as English and math. That's a well-rounded education. Some amount of recreation. Kids need about 60 minutes a day. Some of our kids are lucky if they get gym once a week. Let's stay focused. This is a Philly issue. It's a regional issue. It's a state issue. It's an American issue. We are a strong nation if we support education. I said this in Birmingham. I'll say this here and I'll close. Education should be considered a part of the national defense of the United States of America. That's how we win. That's how we're strong. You can have respect the military, respect the men and women. They're out there. We get to do what we do here at home because of what they're doing abroad. But we're not the biggest, baddest nation on the planet just because we got more planes than everybody else. It's got to be about innovation. It has to be about technology. It has to be an understanding that every young person in this room, I'm willing to bet, and I'm not much of a betting guy because I really don't have any money, but every young person I run into has a cell phone in their pocket. And that's wonderful. I want them to understand that you can do more with that cell phone than call your friends, be on Twitter, send pictures around. This is one of the most powerful tools ever created. Because you have access to the thing that Al Gore created, the internet. Remember that? Talking about anytime, anywhere, any device learning. You can go anywhere you want to go on that phone. You can do more than just communicate with your friends. I see young people all the time sitting around the table. They're talking to each other at the same table. I said, do you ever speak to each other? No, we just send messages. It's a powerful tool. Let us not be the only ones who just use it to make phone calls. You can buy things, you can learn things, you can see things, you can experience things on that device and more. The number changed, I'm sorry. It was 41%. It has dropped. 30% of people in Philadelphia estimated not to have access to the internet. If you can't access the internet, you don't have access. Our young people need it for research. They needed to do their reports. They needed to get information. Next year, in 2014, you will not be able to take the GED tests on paper. You will only be able to take it on a computer. 80% of the jobs in the United States of America, you can't fill out a paper application for. And you're not going to find them all in the New York Times. You're taking that test, that application on a computer. They used to say if you want to hide something, put it in a book. Now it's on the internet. Let's wake up, folks. We have work to do. Let's be serious about our job. Our job is to work for the future. Our job is to make it such that little number 24 there, I don't know who wears 24 for the Eagles anymore, but our job is to make sure that number 24 there, if he wants to be a football player, fantastic. But if he wants to be a scientist, let's make sure that opportunity is there. If he wants to own a supermarket, drive a bus, do whatever you want to do. There's never been as much opportunity in the United States of America as there is today. Let us not hold each other back by shooting and killing each other in the street. Let us not hold each other back by not patronizing our own stores in our own communities. Let us not hold each other back by not being on the same page in our advocacy for proper funding to educate our children. This is our time. This must be our mission. God bless you.
Good afternoon. I am very honored to be here with you this afternoon, and I would like to thank Reverend Al Sharpton and the National Action Network for putting this conference together and inviting me. There are a number of educators here who I respect the work that they've done for so many years, and I've enjoyed the exchange of ideas that I've heard since I've been here with you. I would prefer today's conversation regarding public education to be focused on ways to improve instruction, curriculum, and talk about how to use technology and other things that improve the quality of education for Philadelphia's young people. But of course, by now, I'm sure that everyone here knows about the crises that Philadelphia schools are in. I know that the superintendent greeted you earlier today. I know that the mayor was here, and I'm sure they talked about the crises in our schools. I am sad to say that after many, many years of underfunding, that our schools are in a position where our children aren't getting the basics. And that should be a concern for all of us. I've listened to the discussion about college applications financial aid, but we have a responsibility to make sure that our students leave Philadelphia schools prepared to compete in higher education and in the world of work. And with what's happening in Philadelphia schools today, that just is not going to happen. And we, and the National Action Network, has to take a position to make sure that Philadelphia students get the kind of education they deserve. When I talk about not getting the basics, I mean that most of our students this year don't have access to libraries because so many of the school librarians were laid off. That includes schools like Central High School, a school that has symbolized academic excellence for generations. Imagine a school where most of the student body plans to go to college, yet they can't access the resources in a beautiful multi-million-dollar library. That is unacceptable. At Lincoln High School, a comprehensive high school, it's become a challenge for the 1,800 students who attend to even use the bathroom when they need to go because there are not enough non-instructional personnel in the building to be there to make sure that those doors are unlocked for children. That is just a very, very basic thing that should be available for children with ease, without any hassle, in a public school. Class sizes have ballooned. Schools began this week, and we've heard reports of class sizes of 40, 50, and even 60 children in a classroom. That is not going to do anything to help our children have a good experience. Over 60% of our schools do not have full-time counselors. It's unreasonable to think that a child will only have a crisis on a day when one of the roving counselors happens to be in a school, especially in a city like Philadelphia, where kids are dealing with such a wide range of in and out of school issues and challenges. All of this is happening as the state is moving toward the Common Core state standards, and high school seniors will be required to pass Keystone exams in order to graduate. We all need to be focused on how we can better prepare students for college, careers, and life in the 21st century. But if we can't even afford enough paper and pencils and other materials for our classrooms, we can't even begin to discuss the coming changes. When it comes to the need for a quality education, the stakes have never been higher for our children. The accountability for educators is increasing, and the standard for higher achievement is higher for our schools and for the students. The tragedy is that while expectations are being raised, the amount Harrisburg is investing in public schools has been drastically scaled down. Under Governor Corbett, we have seen Philadelphia schools starve to the point that it's almost unfair to call them schools. When I was introduced, you heard in the introduction that I am a product of the Philadelphia public schools. I know what good Philadelphia public schools should look like. I went to one. And today's children deserve to go to the same kind of schools that I went to. With all the brilliant minds we have here today, I wish we could talk more about how we could give our children a cutting-edge 21st century education. That's a critical conversation that we should be having. But the task in front of us is more immediate. We need to discuss how we can work together to pressure our elected officials in Harrisburg to reinstate a fair and sustainable funding formula for public education. We had this formula before Governor Corbett took office, and our schools were beginning to improve. Now, thanks to the governor, we are one of a very few states in the nation that doesn't have a funding formula. When it comes to public education investment, the Commonwealth is ranked number 42 in the nation. The level of disinvestment in our schools is a crime, and Philadelphia school children are among the victims. This is not an exaggeration. It is a crime when a child who is struggling with personal issues can't see a counselor. It is criminal when non-trained staff are required to dispense medication to children and they don't know one pill from another, yet they're giving medication to our children. It's criminal to close down a neighborhood school and send children to a school that may be in a hostile neighborhood and eliminate non-teaching assistants and other safety personnel. It is criminal for the state to abandon its responsibility to provide an adequate public education for every child. Rather than recognize his role in the state of our schools, our governor has chosen instead to say that Philadelphia's teachers should pay for this deficit out of their own pockets. He's even gone as far as to hold back $45 million in much-needed federal money until he's satisfied that the teachers have given enough. The sooner our schools have sustainable and sufficient revenue, the sooner we can spend more time talking about how we can maximize the potential of our children and less time figuring out Band-Aid solutions to get us through another year. My biggest hope is that we can meet here again in the near future and not have to talk about what our schools lack, but spend the entire afternoon discussing what our schools can and should be. Thank you for having me this afternoon.
Used that entrance, but thank you, Chaz, for that great introduction. My name is Dominique Sharpton, and I represent Education for a Better America. I'm the board president, and EBA is basically a new corporation that what we do is we seek to promote, fund, sponsor, and conduct activities that will build an educational system that serves the needs of students in urban communities. The mission of the organization is to build bridges between policymakers and the classroom by supporting innovations in the delivery of education, creating a dialogue between policymakers, community leaders, educators, parents, and students, and also disseminating that information and its findings that will positively impact our schools. Here in the city of Philadelphia, as many of you know, we are dealing with a major crisis in education and its school system, and it's just not okay that Philadelphia children went back to school this week with limited nurses and extracurricular activities, music, no guidance counselors. So if there's no guidance counselors, then who is there for our young people when they have crises or need, someone to talk to, or who is there to help them and advise them on applying for colleges and financial aid? So our youth are being forced into classrooms that are overcrowded, not enough desks, no books, no papers, and they're being put in danger as they ride through unfamiliar and unsafe neighborhoods on a daily basis to get to schools because of the lack of transportation that's being cut and other things in the city. So we feel that Philadelphia children deserve better. And so we are here, the school district, should not have to go to drastic measures just to meet bare minimum needs, but the focus should really be on closing the achievement gap, graduating from college, and preparing young people to be ready for successful careers. As you may or may not know, recent studies, they show that graduation rates in the city of Philadelphia have hovered between 50 and 60% over the past decade. And the economic ripple effects of this dropout crisis is really significant. The unemployment rate here among individuals without a high school diploma is double the rate of those with a diploma. And each dropout represents a $260,000 burden in lost earnings, taxes, and productivity. So this situation of starving out the Philadelphia school district amounts to the severe detriment of children who had nothing to do with creating the problem. And even though these desperate measures and circumstances have aroused in the district, the young people whom are suffering from this the most have stayed strong and courageous to get ahead and to stay in school. And parents and community leaders have begun volunteering at various schools to try and fill the void and reform these schools. They've been calling up their state reps and senators and letting their voices be heard. And we just want to let you know that we will continue to stand up for our children, and we won't take no for an answer or an alternative to ensuring that our youth have access to a quality education. And we are here to make sure that we help them along and bolster their dreams and aspirations. So this event today that you are all here for is a part of a nationwide endeavor to increase the pursuit of post-secondary education, increase civic engagement, prevent school dropouts, and also promote health and wellness across the country. A high school dropout is twice as likely to be unemployed, and the majority of new jobs that will be created over the next decade will require some type of post-secondary education. Our higher education awareness, dropout prevention, and health initiative that you all will engage in today serves as an opportunity to rise above the politics and bolster the connection between communities, school systems, and colleges in order to help close the opportunity gap in the United States. And so we want to help bring the community together to deal with this current education crisis. The city has great programs like Get Healthy Philly and Philly Goes to College that we'll present today that need to really be maximized at a time like this. This event held today in the Great Hall on the campus of the Community College of Philadelphia, as you heard, will feature various workshops on college and career readiness, health and wellness, breaking down the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. That's very important. That will impact all of us. And you'll also hear remarks, as a young lady mentioned before, from various leaders in the community, including Mayor Michael Nutter, the Superintendent, Dr. William Haidt, Reverend Al Sharpton, my father, will be here. So we have, so many community leaders and people that really are going to be here to address this crisis. But we have to continue to engage and commit to standing up and raising our voices to save the youth of Philadelphia. And that's why we are here. As you saw, this fashion show and great talent show that just happened was sponsored by Sharpton Entertainment. And the reason that we included that in this event today is because we want to show our youth and to continue to provide positive outlets for them to showcase their many talents, to channel their energy, and to also have fun and continue to aspire to become whatever it is that they want to be. And we want to continue to support them. So give it up for the Fashion and Talent Show. And thank you all for all those who participated in that portion. So we have something for everyone here, and we want to encourage our youth and their parents and families who are also here today that you can be and do anything you set your mind to doing. And we want to help bolster and support our young people's dreams and aspirations. And we're here to provide that access to valuable information that can help jumpstart their careers, and believe that no matter what background or environment you come from, everyone should have access to a quality education and have the opportunities to engage and be connected with the communities we live in and come together to really empower and keep our minds and bodies focused on truly making a difference in this great country that we live in. President Obama said this best. He said, higher education can't be a luxury. It's an economic imperative that every family in America should be able to afford. So that's why we're here today, and I just wanted to say thank you all for being here. Thank you to the City of Philadelphia. Thank you to the Community College of Philadelphia and its staff for really helping us to put on this magnificent program today. And I hope that you leave away from this program really, really ready to stay committed to being active in this fight for our children, as is really important. I encourage you to stop by the registration table and pick up some information on Education for a Better America and our various initiatives that we host. And I encourage you to stay engaged in your community. Join the National Action Network, get involved. Let's stay engaged and stay committed to our youth and to the future. That's really important. Thank you so much. He's going to introduce them.
Left, she's a product of the Philadelphia area, graduate of Clark Atlanta University, undergrad, got a master's degree from the New School. You've seen her on MSNBC and contributed to the Loop 21. She was the Washington, D.C. Bureau Chief for the National Action Network and was recently named as the Executive Director of the National Action Network. Give it up for Ms. Janae Ingram. To the left of Janae, she's a senior right here in Philadelphia at Central High School. She went to Houston Middle School. Let's give it up for Philadelphia Public Schools. Let's give it up. Her name is Miss Shira Smiley. To her left, you may have seen her in some NBC 10 ads. She's a teacher coach for the School District of Philadelphia. She's a graduate of Temple University. Let's give it up for Miss LaShawna Coleman. And to the furthest left of me, she's a co-founder of Parents United for Public Education, previous editor of The Notebook. Let's give it up for Miss Helen Gim. We're going to start off with opening statements from each panelist. Ms. Gim, let's hear from you first.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much. You know, this is a really hard time to be speaking to all of you to talk about something as wonderful as looking forward to college and aspirations of all young people to go beyond what their high schools have given them. And I say that's really hard because it's like very frustrating and emotional to be a parent in the school district of Philadelphia right now. There's no question that what's happened in Philadelphia and probably all over the nation is that we have a growing disconnect between the standards that we say we want for our young children and the resources and opportunities that we give them in reality. And I want to give an example of what's happening in Philadelphia public schools. The governor of Pennsylvania has taken out almost $1 billion from the Pennsylvania school education budget, money that has hardly been replaced. To give you a sense of what that means, this year the Pennsylvania state legislature increased the amount of money going to each prisoner and parolee in the state of Pennsylvania by over $1,000 and gave public school students an increase of 10. That's 100 times less. So what does that mean? Because budgets are just numbers on a spreadsheet, but I'll tell you what it means for my son who started 9th grade this year. It meant he had 60 students in his biology class and 41 in algebra. It meant that every class in his school had ranges in the mid-30s to upper 40s. It meant that he has 674 students in his 9th grade class, 2,400 in his school overall, and 2 counselors to serve all of them. And actually, he's one of the lucky ones because the majority of Philadelphia public schools don't even have a full-time counselor in them. Instead, they have 1 counselor serving 7 or 8 schools, roughly 1 counselor to a 2,000 to 3,000 student ratio. How can we talk about being college and career ready when we can't guarantee our children a guidance counselor in schools? Meanwhile, his $4.5 million library has been closed. He is the first cohort of students mandated to take mandatory graduation exams, so even to graduate, he must pass a series of exams. But they've eliminated all the MG and honors classes from his school, and he no longer has sufficient support and administrative staff. This isn't unusual. All across the school district, we see things like 1 nurse for every 1,500 students, Massive overcrowding all across the school district. We have split grades for elementary schools. That's a combination of 2 grades with 1 teacher simply because of a budget issue. We've got situations where we've got no assistant principals unless a school has at least 850 students, and a handful of 1 secretary for 1 entire school, some of them as large as, say, Northeast High School, which has 3,000 students. Your call will be answered in the order in which it was received. So, it's a little hard for me to talk about what it means when we talk a bit about being college and career ready, because we need to talk about what it means to make not just our students and our staff accountable, but what we're talking about as a nation in terms of making our schools accountable to the students and the families which they serve. We have to think thoughtfully about issues like choice. We have one of the largest charter school systems in the city, and I think I, as a parent and also as a charter school founder, have thought very carefully about the limitations of choice as well as its possibilities. But we have to start thinking that as a city of Philadelphia, the charter school system in Philadelphia is the 2nd largest school district in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It's not to say that it's a problem, but if it's not going to be funded, we are funding these schools in lieu of our public schools, not in addition to, and that's where we have a problem. When individual choice trumps collective responsibility for our public schools, we are not going to have the kind of schools that are going to serve an equitable number of students to the best quality and access that we can receive. So I won't take up all the time, but I feel very passionately that the struggle for Philadelphia public schools right now is about justice, it's about equity, and it's absolutely 100% about funding and holding this state and this city, every single one of our elected officials, accountable for the money and the resources that we're seeing in our schools right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Teacher Coach Lashana Coleman.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here with all of you. And as Ms. Gims said, it is very difficult to talk about college access and what our students need to do to be ready when our schools aren't giving them the opportunities to do so. As a product of the Philadelphia public school system, I went to schools where there were counselors in the schools, there were community coordinators, there was a nurse every day. There was someone there to take care of all your needs, whether your family was able to or not. So we're fighting every day to make sure that your children and your younger siblings have schools that provide them access and resources to things that will make them college ready. Because if we make all these plans and don't act on them, none of us will be ready for college. Thank you.
All right. Central High School senior Shira Smiling.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As a senior at Central High School, I am most affected by the budget cuts of the city of Philadelphia. And personally, it's tough. I go to a school with over 2,000 kids, and we have 2 counselors. So, and 1,500 of those kids aren't going to college. So you can only imagine how stressed my counselor is when I come to her and I'm asking her for help about the college process. In addition, 8 years ago, the alumni of Central High School of Philadelphia put together $5 million to build a library in my school, which today is closed because of the budget cuts and because the librarian was cut from my school. In addition to that, we have classrooms with between 30 to 50 kids, which is ridiculous to say the least. But I am glad to be here today to speak on behalf of the students of Philadelphia, and I'm hopeful for a positive turnaround and a positive future. Thank you.
National Action Network Executive Director Janae Ingram.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I am actually from right across the bridge, Camden, New Jersey, and I graduated from Cherry Hill Public School District. Spent 2 years there, but most of my education was in Camden. And so I know about what happens here in Philadelphia pretty well. My family still lives in New Jersey, and I have some of them here with me today. And it's something that I've been hearing about for years. Obviously, we've had our own challenges in my hometown, but education across the board is an opportunity. Education, I've always said, is the door to success. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you're educated that you're going to be successful, that you're going to be a millionaire, but it at least provides the opportunity to be successful. And right now what we're seeing here in this city is beyond concerning. I think when you think about all of the statistics that you've heard and the issues that you've heard with there not being enough teachers, there not being enough nurses, there aren't enough counselors, how do we properly prepare our students not just for college and career, but for life? Ultimately, we know that the school districts are a place where children do get education, but they're also a place for so much more. For a lot of our children, it may be the one time that they get a meal a day, or the 2 times that they get a meal a day. It may be the only adult supervision that they have, because maybe their parents are working, or maybe they're in the foster care system, or maybe they're dealing with challenges at home, and education is their way out. When we're cutting funding to education, it's essentially saying that we don't care about these children, but more, that's what it's saying. But more than that, it's also saying that we don't care about our nation. Because if we don't prepare our students to be educated individuals, what does that say about our ability to compete and to be competitive in the global market? When we have other countries who are passing us in their ability to have students be able to read on grade level, or perform in math, or be able to problem solve and critical thinking. So when we look at this, it's bigger than just, are we educating children? Are we preparing children to get into college? Because it's not just about college. Ultimately, each one of us, once we get through college, if you choose to go that path, you have a life beyond that. And you can't have a substantial life, a successful life, unless you've been properly equipped and prepared. And so this issue is a critical issue. And I know Mayor Nutter said it, and I believe it as well, that education is the civil rights issue of our generation, of this generation. Because right now, it's the thing that provides the opportunity. It's the basis for all other doors. When you think about the lack of education, you're thinking about the lack of housing and the inability for people to be upwardly mobile, to move into the middle class. And so this is the issue that we have to be focused on. And it's not just about the school district. It's not just about your elected officials. It's about each one of us in this room and others being able to come to the table and figure out how we solve this issue. Because we can't do it alone. None of us can do it alone.
Thank you. I'm going to put this out to the entire panel. The city of Philadelphia chronically over the last 10, 20 years has struggled with the dropout rate that has hovered between 40 and 50%. We know that a high school dropout is twice as likely to be unemployed. Get this, a black male high school dropout is 38 times more likely to go to prison than a black male college graduate. Why would you say kids, particularly in Philadelphia, are dropping out of school? And what are some of the things that we can do to remedy that? Open that to the panel.
Okay, I'll chime in. Good afternoon again. I believe the main cause of dropout is lack of resources, and we have such large class sizes. When students are in schools where they have lots of counselors and they have lots of teachers so that the ratios are lower, they have a more personal relationship. They have someone they can go and talk to, someone who knows them, who knows their families, who knows their plight. And they provide them things. They talk to them. They tell them about other options. They enroll them in programs that we're also missing now. We don't have the night school options that we had in the past. We don't have as many other just places that we used to send our kids when they were struggling with day-to-day school. So if our government continues to lower the amount of funds that we have in our schools, we're going to have even less options for these students that don't fit into the traditional models.
I would just add, I think some of the challenges that create students, the atmosphere where students feel the need to drop out, is one, teaching for the test. I think right now we have an educational system that prepares students specifically for a test, whether it's a state test or a city test. They're preparing students for a test and not really giving students what they need to succeed in life. Again, I will continue to say that because that's ultimately what it's about. I attended an event in D.C. Where a woman, a teacher who had been a teacher, was saying that she had taught her class fractions specifically for this test that they were going to have. And they did so well. All of the students, had phenomenal scores on the test. But when it came time to celebrate the fact that they had done so well, she decided to have a pizza party. And she told each of the students that they could have something like 2/4 of the pizza. And the students could not figure it out. So she had just gone through this exercise of teaching students about fractions and how to figure out fractions. But when it came time for that practical application, they were lost. And I think that's what happens a lot of times in our schools. We're so caught up in teaching for this specific test that we forget that these are life lessons, that students need to know how to do fractions in order to just simply live, in order to count money, figuring out how much change. It blows my mind how many times I walk into a store and I give someone a specific amount of money for my transaction, and they have to look at the cash register to figure out how much change I get. Even when it's as simple as my bill is $22.02 and I give them $25.02, they can't figure it out. That's an issue. I think the other challenge is that students don't necessarily feel like they don't feel like they're getting what they need. So a lot of times what happens is students get pushed along from grade to grade. So you're teaching for the test, and then you're trying to make sure that you get the student to the next grade. So the student goes to the next grade without a real understanding of how to accomplish something, and what happens? They're lost in class. They don't understand what's going on. So why waste their time being there? And ultimately, that creates a feeling like, I don't have a purpose here, I'm going to drop out.
First I want to say that the dropout rate for Philadelphia is comparable to national rates. So I don't want people to think that Philadelphia has an exceptional problem. What we do have, though, is a problem shared among a lot of large cities serving low-income youth of color. And that is the serious challenge that we have to look at. It's not the fault of youth of color in Philadelphia. It is the question of what we're doing to serve youth of color all across the country in the largest school districts in the country when we continue to strip resources. The second thing I wanted to point out is that the graduation rate is what's called an outcome, and there's been an enormous focus on the outcomes of children, and especially things like the graduation rate. And people go, oh my God, they freak out. Or they throw out a test score, oh my God, it's horrible and we got to do something. And most of the things that they come up with is they want to punish kids. They want to punish kids and the people who teach them. So let's think about ways in which they punish people. They want to close down their schools. They want to do things like strip down, deny them. You don't need AP classes or honor classes or we won't do, like holistic instruction. We're going to start remediating you immediately, putting you down into the lowest levels, the most stripped down basics of education and learning. We create a school to prison pipeline that punishes young children as young as kindergarten for acting out in class if they're not strictly behaving according to narrow standards. And then we increase the punishment for those children as they proceed through schools. We take away the arts and music. We forgot that we have a mandate to teach children how to dance and sing and act. We forget about opportunities. We're so obsessed with standardized curriculum and the testing structure that we forget that we give children a chance to learn how to be among one another, to treat one another with humanity and decency, to have lunchrooms that actually don't feel like it's a mad rush to eat something in the 30 minutes that you have to scarf something down and rush to your next class. That sometimes lunch could be a chance to sit down with a teacher in a round table to serve food that is freshly cooked from a kitchen, not off of deheated off of a frozen food truck from California. These are the things that people are so focused on outcomes that we forget about inputs. And the inputs into a child's learning are not the outcomes. It's not going to be the test. The test is not the input to the test score. So If we're going to talk about outcomes, then you darn well better talk about the ways in which you learn how to educate children. And if those answers aren't coming from educators, if they're coming from people who've got think tanks and boardrooms and Wall Street behind them, then I would think very carefully again, because they don't understand what it takes to educate young people. They're obsessed with the output. They throw those numbers out and they create fear and anger and confusion and resentment towards the wrong parties, because that's what part of that purpose is. But when you realize that young people aren't a prescribed output, you can't stick an input right in there and guarantee that they're going to have a certain number and a figure, because that's not what they are. When you realize that what is an input into a child can be an opportunity to dance and sing, an amazing opportunity to be part of a sport, to realize that they need a qualified professional teacher in front of them that feels like they have a sustainable career, then those are the kinds of things that are going to settle our schools down. You don't see this conversation in successful schools because they have stability, they have calmness, they do a breadth of curriculum. That's not what we're seeing in Philadelphia.
Thank you. Shira Smiley is a senior at Central High School. Shira, what are some of the reasons why some of the kids who came in with you as a freshman are no longer in school? And what can these adults do to stop that, keep them in school?
Well, I think that the students in Philadelphia, they're faced with a lot of responsibility that people either don't acknowledge or don't realize. A lot of kids, they're taking care of siblings, they're worrying about how they're going to eat or if they've even ate last night. And then, they go to school, and like Mayor Nutter was talking about, a lot of teachers don't like kids. So then they have this teacher who may just sit at a desk and not teach, or is strictly just teaching to the test. So then it becomes a question to the student: why am I here? What am I learning? How is this benefiting me when I can just go out and get a job and just work quickly? So I think that the students, they essentially don't see the benefit or the bigger picture, and they just see, well, why stay in school when I can just go to work? And I think that the adults really need to see students for who they are and not just a number. Mm-hmm. These are people we are people with feelings. We are people with problems just like you, and it's important to really know us and get to know us. So yeah.
Thank you very much. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that last year 284,000 people with college degrees were working in minimum wage jobs. So how can we connect education to employment? Education to employment, how do we bridge that gap? One of the things she just talked about was the disconnect between why am I learning this? How am I going to use this in the real world? How do we bridge that gap? Anyone in the panel? Education to employment. Make the connection. Education to employment.
All right, I'll start again. I think that we need to take into consideration that we are preparing our students for not just college, but also for career. That means that we incorporate programs like our CTE programs, where students are able to learn trades. We've decided somehow that these things don't matter anymore, and they do. Because I don't know about you all, but every time I call a plumber, it's $150 just to show up at my house. So to me, it seems like a pretty sustainable career with a decent middle-class living, which is what we want for all of our students. So as Shira was saying, there aren't teachers necessarily in classrooms who don't like children. We love children. We want to take care of them. And adults are people too, and sometimes small frustrations come out because we don't want to teach to test. And we know that not every child in our class needs to sit there and necessarily sit through calculus if that child wants to be a plumber. We should give them opportunities to study their trade so that they can apply the knowledge that they're learning in schools with what they intend to do in life, and not what they need to write on a test come March or April every school year that won't affect their lives.
The Bureau of Labor recently reported that most of the new jobs that are going to be created will be in STEM fields. A lot of the new high-paying jobs, STEM, that's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. STEM fields. And those jobs in STEM fields are going to earn, on average, 26% more than non-STEM fields. So how do we begin to build our STEM pipeline, get kids into STEM, get them excited about learning math and science in the same way that they get excited and we salute them if they hit a jump shot or if they score a touchdown? How can we get this young man right here interested and cultivate his gift in math and science? How do we build that STEM pipeline here in the city of Philadelphia?
I think in particular, it is teaching practical education. So making education tangible in a sense that people understand it, whether it's doing experiments or what have you. I've never done it, but I've always wanted to be the kid that built the volcano and made the lava come out like you see on TV. I think that that's a fun way to engage students in science. I was someone who was very engaged in science. I took a lot of extra science courses in high school, and I think that the thing that always interested me was just seeing how it applied in real life. So I think that that's one of the ways that we can, ensure that students get engaged in the STEM fields. I also think that there's another letter that's hanging out there that a lot of people are starting to talk about more, and that's the A. So taking STEM and turning it into STEAM. And the A is really for the arts and thinking about arts. And we're talking here about how art has just been cut out of the equation. But it is important to instill the arts back into our education system. I think that it enriches students' educational experiences. I have a cousin here who's a singer, and we were talking about how math sort of relates to arts, and she was talking about counting musical notes. So thinking about education in a way that may be different from, again, thinking and teaching for the test. And then the other thing I want to say is that I think a lot of times people hear they hear things and then they start to repeat them. So people may say, oh, well, I'm terrible in math, and think that that's acceptable. And imagine if someone said that about reading. Imagine if somebody said, oh, I'm terrible at reading. Everyone would look at them, kind of sideways. So we shouldn't allow or encourage people to say, oh, I'm terrible at math. I think we have to instill in people that you can be good at anything. And we have to, instill them and empower them to be good.
One other thing to also think about is that if we care passionately about very challenging subjects that we want young children to learn, then we should think about investing in the teachers who are going to be teaching them. So for example, in Philadelphia, the average length of tenure for a Philadelphia teacher is right at about 5 years. The national average is 14. And when you look at stories like, for example, the New York Times op-ed recently had actually a headline that asked, do you need experience to be a teacher? And if people say, well, gee, that's a really good question, then if you want to talk about STEM, keep talking and dreaming, because it takes an experienced teacher who has been in the classroom for a while to recognize and to be able to teach in rich classes, to teach them richly. So in Philadelphia, one of the struggles that we have is to invest in a professional teaching force that sees a sustainable long-term career. If we populate our schools with teachers who turn over and quit, 50% of them quit before they even reach 5 years, it will continue to deplete the opportunities that we give to young people to seek bigger, broader types of curricula that we offer in schools, to try and integrate different core subject areas, to build enriched curriculum in our schools. So the investment in a professional teaching force to value experience in teaching, not to make it some kind of a shameful thing or a problematic thing or something that's inconsequential, but to recognize that continuing and developing and investing in experienced teachers is the key to seeing an enriched and powerful curriculum in our schools too.
Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to pause our town hall meeting. Let's all give it up for the town hall thus far. And begin formulating questions based on what you've heard for the panelists. All right. At this time, I'm going to bring up our career spotlight keynote speaker. He's a native of Brooklyn, New York. He began preaching at the age of 4, ordained at the age of 9. He came up in Operation Breadbasket. He inherited his inexhaustible work ethic from the hardest working man in show business, Mr. James Brown. In 1991, he founded the National Action Network. Currently, he's the host of Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton and the host of MSNBC Politics Nation. Let's all rise for the preeminent civil rights leader of our generation, the Reverend Al Sharpton.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to Professor Marcus Bright and to all of you that are here. Forgive me for being late, but we had our Saturday action rally in New York and had the winners of this week's primary there, and you know politicians talk too long. And I've got to get back, but I come for three real reasons. One, the importance that education has in our society. Secondly, because I'm concerned about the state of education in Philadelphia. And third, because NAN partners with EBA, and EBA is run by my daughter, and I had to come, I'd have no peace in the valley. But let me say that just 3 Saturdays ago, we had a huge march in Washington around the continuation, 50 years later, of Dr. King's dream. And we are fighting to get a new voter law named after John Lewis, because many states, including Pennsylvania, is trying to change voting laws. We're fighting about jobs, but we're also fighting about education. There is a direct and clear effort to privatize education in this country. There is a direct effort to eliminate public education. How do we talk about democratizing places around the world, including Syria, and try to democratize education in places like Pennsylvania? In many places around this country, including New York, they are literally taking public school space, giving it to private charter schools. So at one hand, they cut budgets, allow people to come in and make money in public school buildings on charter schools that are owned by private interests that make a profit off of the few while you cut the budget over the many. Now, I don't have a problem with innovative projects around charter if it is to innovate so that public education can improve. But they've now gone from experimental charter to replacement of public education. And we need to be clear that, yes, we need to encourage and inspire young people on education, but we need to first make sure that the adults are committed to public education. The problem is not the children if the adults have written off public education in the name of the schools don't work. Well, there's no reason to keep investing because the children are not learning. Well, first of all, let's talk like we have good sense. Schools don't work. They're just factories for miseducation. Well, when you cut $1 billion out the budget and you cut away arts programs, cut away extracurricular, cut away counselors, you have money, Governor Corbett, he's the governor here, right?
Oh, yeah. Not for long. Hopefully not.
I wouldn't come unless I did my homework. Y'all got money, Corbett, for jails, but no money for schools. And you ask what's wrong with the kids, I come to ask what's wrong with you.
That's right.
Bible says that you reap what you sow. Well, if you invest in jails and cut the budget on schools, you're investing in incarceration rather than education.
That's right.
You can bring technology and computerize prisons and can't computerize schools. I can get a single bed in jail, but go in a classroom with 35 and 40 students. I'm talking about in Philadelphia. I'm not talking about down south in Alabama back in the day. I'm talking about today in Philadelphia. So if we are to be serious about education, we've got to deal with the priorities about those in government. One, you cut the budget, you overpopulate the classroom, you cut goods and services, and then you say the problem is the teacher. No teacher can make 35 and 40 students in a classroom work. No teacher can do that. No teacher can be the teacher, the guidance counselor, the coach, the babysitter, the mama and daddy, and get a cut and pay at the same time. So what they have done, the new Philadelphia plan, is scapegoat the teacher, because the teacher is accessible to the parent. They underground, you're the problem, parent-teacher fighting, budget cutters, and those that are building jails rather than funding schools are not accessible. They escape through the smoke of an argument that they've created. We need to bust that up, because if we fight for the right for public education of all children, it would inspire the children, because they will understand they are a priority and somebody cares about them. When you look at the fact 60% of schools have no full-time counselors, you know, it's interesting. The right wing says the problem is inner city, black, Latino family breakdown, single parent home, babies out of wedlock. Yet they kept the counselors. Well, if we so messed up, then why are y'all cutting the folk to help get us straight? Y'all say we dysfunctional, but then you take away the folk to teach us how to be functional, because you really don't believe that. You can't have both ways. If I'm crazy, then I need a counselor.
That's right.
Or either I'm not crazy. I mean, which one you gonna say? So I really think we need an education movement. And we need to really show, in the name of Dr. King and those that fought, that education is a civil right. And we cannot fight to achieve the dream and full civil right without fighting for educational equality. And educational equality is not privatizing education, it is restoring and saving public education. You will never have enough charter schools for all the children. You will never have enough private schemes for all of the children. So by the nature of what it is a selection of some rather than an election of everybody. You know, I have a book coming out in 3 weeks called The Rejected Stone. I talk about growing up rejected, being part of a race rejected. And part of what I've learned, part of what I've pointed out, is that this whole new education process that they're pushing, that some call education reform, that is really, Jerry Jordan, education deform, is they are trying to make us choose between children. Well, he can get in the charter, or she can get certain allowances because they have potential. This one doesn't have potential. Well, when I was growing up, I didn't look like somebody that had no potential. So I know that's not fair, because they wouldn't have chose me. There were kids in my class out of two-parent home, had a higher reading and math level. They would have gotten in where I couldn't get. But I'm hosting a TV show and a radio show and going to the White House, and they not. So you can't choose who's going to be what. You can't decide somebody's potential. You give everybody the tools and let folk figure out what they're going to do. And let people decide based on equal opportunity and equal access to quality education. In the richest country in the world, we should have education as a right, not as a privilege or a selective process. Right winger tell me, well, you understand that people come from broken, dysfunctional families, dysfunctional neighborhoods, not going to be much or nothing. I said, well, let me ask you something. I got a friend of mine, come out of single-parent home, only saw his daddy maybe about a month in his life, grew up different parts, different houses, was on food stamps part of his life. Do you think he grew up in a mountain or something? He said, probably not. I said, well, next time you're in Washington, go by his house. He had 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. My point is that when you cut these budgets, Corbett, and can find $400 million for jail, and the federal government give you debt relief and you still can't find a way for public education, you are cutting off not a future inmate, but a future president or secretary of state or doctor or lawyer. And it is how you view these children is how you behave. You see them as inmates. We see them as creators. You don't see their potential. But all of us that have come up the rough side of the mountain know you don't blame the child for the mountain. That's right. Children didn't cut the budget in Pennsylvania. Children didn't build the jails in Pennsylvania. Yes, there's some bad kids, but there's some bad adults. 5 years ago, this weekend, Lehman Brothers crashed. You bail them out. That's a bailout. But if a single mother raising 2 kids needs some help feed her children, you call that a handout. What is the difference between a bailout and a handout? Other than racism, and you gonna decide one is a beggar and the other is a businessman. The businessman should have had more sense not to need help than the single mama. We have got to control the definition again in this public dialogue. So my message to you as you continue the town hall meeting is, yes, we need to inspire young people. We need them to go and pursue a higher education, but they cannot do it with budgets cut, with faulty and flawed priorities, and with being treated as future inmates rather than future leaders and whole citizens. Yes, there are some teachers that need to be held accountable, but the teaching profession should not be denigrated, and they should not be scapegoated for irresponsible politicians that want to balance the budgets of their own misjudgments on the backs of innocent, vulnerable children. As Professor Bright said, I've been in civil rights since I was a teenager. I became youth director of Operation Breadbasket when I was 13. We did not fight for the right to elect blacks or others in the office to become the saboteurs of the dream that produced them in the first place.
That's right.
So we must challenge, we must stand up, and we must give our children the opportunity that they deserve. So I would hope as you conclude this day that we conclude by joining the fight that's already vibrant in the city of Philadelphia to preserve public education and to stand with those inside of it. I'm doing a whole test and focus on gun violence in Chicago. We're moving into Chicago at the end of this month. And we are also going to do a test model on my MSNBC show about education. And the city I'm going to focus on is Philadelphia, the whole world. The whole world needs to know, in the city of brotherly love, where y'all got Rocky running up and down them steps, that they are building jails and closing schools. They need to know. The whole world need to know that y'all have unelected officials that have destabilized the future of this city. They need to know in the city that we wrote the original Constitution and the Bill of Rights, children's right to an education is being robbed. We're going to take the veil off of the city. You will not hide. I want you to stand butt naked in front of the world and let the world see what you're doing to the children in Philadelphia. Thank you and God bless you.